Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us here today again, and on our fifth episode of Duo on Air. And I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Rafael Ordonez. I'm part of the service team at DALIM, and I'm based in São Paulo, Brazil. And together with me, I have a very special guest, Fred Padilla, CTO at Blanchard System, based on New Orleans. And we would like to talk about three advanced automation workflows for publisher and printers. So, as you know, publishers and printers are long-time partners. They operate together since years, as we saw in the panel, in the previous panel when we had Robert and Ed. Robert is a publisher, Ed is a printer. They both had two very specific requirements regarding the work, but ultimately they need each other to produce and to succeed. Especially today, and where we have an on-demand world, with very tight schedules. So it's not an exaggeration to say that everything has to happen in seconds. And in the worst thing that could happen today is a production stop. So let me share my slide here. Here we go. So DALIM software plays a vital role, placing itself between those two industries while helping them both to achieve their goals. Today, we want to present you those three advanced workflow automations processes that will help publishers and printers business to prosper in the future and today. So let's jump direct on it. We will talk about pre-flight, normalization, and visual compare. So first of all, it's pre-flight. So what is pre-flight? So the plain analogy is appropriate because civil air flights inspired the term of pre-flighting in the first place. So if you are a pilot, you have to do a checklist to go over to make sure that your plane is ready to fly. Similarly, printers have adopted a checklist to review the files before they sending the file to the printer. So the simple act of checking a list may not seem to be a very important part, but it's essential today. Printing machines are usually designed for high speed operation, meaning that by the time an error is detected, hundreds or even thousands of pages have been printed, and this is a major waste of time and money. So I have a question to my friend here, Fred. We say that printers have adopted a checklist to review before sending a file to the printer. So what items this checklist can include, Fred?
Well, if you ever glance inside a twist, you'd see this is a plain pre-flight from Charles, but it's pretty much as big as this. But the basic things are fonts, image resolution, color issues like RGB or ICC colors, size of the file, and PDF standards, overprints, anything that can possibly cause an issue downstream when it hits the rip.
All right. So it's really broad. We have a lot of options here we can check.
Yeah, even customizable options, the ability to do things like make sure that black font over 40 points is set to knockout instead of overprint, or vice versa, however you want to check it.
Yeah. And how does our solution handle those different points inside of these checklists?
But Twist lets you do things, set things depending on how important they are, or the ability to automatically fix them to either warn users that it occurred, let the file go through, or actually hard stop and error the file because maybe image resolution is way too low and the new image needs to be found or it's not going to look good.
Yeah, absolutely. And the final question is, what makes our pre-flight solution special if you compare to another solutions in the market?
Well, if you just look at Twist itself, I mean, I think that key answer to that would be twofold. One is the flexibility of Twist. Ability to integrate it with anything, ability to drive it via databases, XML files, anything like that. For instance, so on the semi-ad and virtual publisher side, products we developed ourselves. When we came up with semi-ad, we were taking basically the ability, the power of Twist that we had successfully sold to many large publishers to take advantage of the pre-flighting and normalization, and we're extending that out to hundreds of smaller publishers so that they could pre-flight their files and normalize their files that they were getting from a lot of different sources. These publishers had no technical resources, barely knew what an X1A file was or any of the standards or what they should check for. Well, to extend Twist to them, we had to basically, in our interface that we put in front of them, make it simple for them to change whatever settings working with us that they wanted to, and then dynamically change what Twist was doing for those files. So every file that gets pre-flighted, sent through semi-ad to Twist, comes with a custom pre-flight profile that gets checked. So it could change file to file depending on all these publishers. There was no way we could extend or have to work with them to create saved pre-flight profiles inside a Twist that would be called depending on publication. We had to do it dynamically. Twist allowed us to do that. On the scalability side, nothing scales like Twist does. I mean, we have users, again, some of these publishers that maybe send less than 100 files a day, one hard worker. And now with microservices, using the tools of Twist as microservices, we have customers that are sending millions of files a day and extending that out. So nothing's to scale like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very scalable, and the granularity makes the strongest point of our solution, absolutely, of DALIM solutions. So in conclusion, we can say that if you are at home and you want to print something, like me, I have a printer here, the most complex thing that you need to do at your printer at your home is check if you have paper in your tray. So that's quite simple. Maybe you can check your ink levels in advance, but once you consider a commercial printer with complex machines and advanced workflows, there's so many variables that can go wrong. So each step in the process, you have to make sure that you don't have any issues. Otherwise, you can end with production problems. So that's the goal of pre-flighting, to make sure that you have no errors and your PDF is good to go. All right, so let me share my screen again. My presentation. And here we go. Let's jump on the second topic. It's about normalization. And now, if you consider normalization, what is normalization? So we are checking files, we are checking the PDF with the pre-flight tools, and we may have errors on this pre-flight process. So the normalized process is quite simple, is to address those errors and try to fix them. So basically, you can receive a file that is not that good, is not ready to be printed, can have a few issues. And then if you have a normalized tool, you can normalize the file according to a defined standard rules, and we can fix those errors for you automatically, if possible. And the normalized process will create a new file. And this new file should be ready to fly, ready to be printed. So you have more trust on the new file. So there goes my question to you, Fred. So what are the different things that we can that the system considers to be normalized and you can fix on the PDF files?
Well, because Twist has that flexibility, it allows us to set things to either just completely fix and let the file pass through, set it to warn possibly so that users are notified that there was a problem they should look at, should have been fixed. Things like color, like came in RGB and we converted it to CMYK. Typically, users want to take a look and make sure that conversion happened properly. Other things like if it had to maybe res an image up or something like that a little bit, you want to check, or if the image is just too low resolution, then you want to error it, stop the file, and make sure that gets fixed properly and manually.
Yeah, absolutely. Like color. If you have special colors and you have a printer that only can print CMYK, we can convert the Pantone color to CMYK automatically. This is the kind of errors that we can find and detect in the PDF and can automatically convert. So that brings me to the next question. We know that this process is automatically, but sometimes it can require a human interaction, or it's fully automatic.
Yeah, so depends on the issue, like we were just talking about. Some issues definitely require human interaction. An issue like what you're showing on the screen right now can be handled programmatically through something like ES. Talk about a channel mapping workflow where you check the channels of the project, what they're supposed to be inside of ES, and actually use the ES interface for a user to map the colors properly, to set it where they want to convert to CMYK, or set that Pantone 144, maybe it should have been Pantone 185, so it matches the rest of the plate, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that reminds me of one issue that we have here with white overprint. For some reason, we have a customer here that they put all text colors in Pantones, and Pantone usually is an overprint color. And to make it white, he put 0% of the Pantone color. And then when they print the page, there was no text. So this kind of issue we can solve with Twist. And that brings me to the final question. So what makes our normalization special if we compare to other solutions in the market?
I think the main thing is the same thing we talked about pre-flighting, is the flexibility and the scalability of the product. Scalability, same thing, is it's just the ability to do microservices if you needed to, or just run a system with 24 hard workers to handle a lot of files. The flexibility side is that ability to integrate it with other products and extend out its capabilities. So anything that requires manual intervention can be gotten to through different interfaces. In ES, there's ability to set the size correctly, so we know what size it needs to be checked to. Tools, we've created a tool in SemiAd that will actually use Twist to fix the size of the file. So we have our own GUI, we fix the size of the file, send it back to Twist, and run it back for the normalization process. So that flexibility is just so important in what we've done over the years with Twist.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the end of the day, the final goal of the normalization process is to have a PDF that is easy to handle, the hit side. So the printers will never stop because of a bad PDF. And if you don't have that, sometimes your printer will stop because you have a file that is bad formatted or is not correctly built, and you can have an issue on the production because of that.
And because of the normalization, and we think of PDF with normalization with Twist, but it's not just that. It could be images, normalizing all kind of image formats to JPEG or TIFF, whatever you'd prefer, or standard resolutions, or converting those resolutions for web, for print, for digital, so that you have all those different formats all being done at the same time as normalization.
Absolutely. Not mention fonts. We have big issues in printing industry with fonts, so we have to address it.
Yeah, and I think one thing important to mention, especially since we're talking about publisher and printer relationships, is the PDF vector file format that DALIM created. That's been a massive success here in the U.S., where plenty of digital providers are using the CT vector format to speed up that display. So we're repurposing that print PDF and creating a very easy file for tablets and other devices to open up.
Absolutely. All right, let's go. Let's jump into the last topic. So let me share my screen again. And here we go. We talk about pre-flight, we talk about normalization process, and we know that unfortunately, sometimes the normalization process can create errors. So sometimes you have a PDF that is so bad built that some elements can be lost. We have so many issues with fonts that some characters can disappear from the page. And this is possible. And sometimes this happens. So that's why we have the checking, right? So if you take in account what is done today to avoid those errors, because these kind of errors are unacceptable. If you imagine if you are printing a supermarket journal where you put in the price on your goodies and the price is lost, it's missing a price, so it's missing a zero. So that can lead you to a big issue. So to avoid that, what we have today, and is still being executed by a lot of companies, that you print the original PDF and then you print the normalized PDF and you put both on the light table and you check them to see if there is any difference. And believe me, there's a lot of companies doing that today because they want to make sure that the PDF is good enough and is correct to be printed. So we can do the pre-flighting, we can do the normalize automatically, and of course we don't have to use and we don't have to print papers to check both PDF today. We can do this using dialogue. Like in this example here, we are putting two revisions of the same document. One can be the original one, the second can be the normalized file, and we can see there are a few changes here. So dialogue will show you if you have any difference between those two pages, if you lost some elements, if you lost text, if on the conversion process, on the normalized process. And of course, this requires an operator, and you can do this for 7,000 pages for a law book, so it's impossible, and it will take too much time. So to avoid that, that's why we build the visual compare tool. So Fred, could you walk us by the visual compare workflow?
Sure. So visual compare is basically an automated way to do what we were just talking about in dialogue and in the manual process, flipping pages. It's based on just taking the original file that hit the workflow and being able to compare it against the file after it was normalized, and DALIM's did its magic through Twist. As great as developers are for DALIM, there's always changes in PDF files, in what designers are able to do in the latest versions of InDesign. Problems with fonts that people find who knows where on the web and actually use in their designs and documents. And different RIPs can handle those in different ways. So we're able to take the basic of visual compare is being able to take, for instance, Adobe Print Engine to normalize the original file and compare that against the results in DALIM's engine and make sure that those are the same, that there's no differences. There's a difference, flag that file and make sure you warn someone that there could be an issue. We have customers who actually, they know they're going to go out to a Harlequin RIP. So they actually run the original file to a Harlequin RIP, all automated inside a Twist, create a rasterized version of the file, send it back to the Twist workflow, and we compare our normalized file to the ripped file inside the Harlequin. So,
yep.
That's the basics. So completely automated through the process.
Absolutely. So what are the user cases for visual compare workflow besides those who already mentioned that printers and publishers can consider to use?
Well, a great thing we've had, some customers do is, we know sometimes that a certain setting in Twist may fix a certain problem we found with a font or with an overprint issue or something like that, a color issue. Sometimes, but that's not necessarily a recommended setting. You don't want to run it like that for every file because it can cause other issues. Well, with Visual Compare, we're able to build workflows that will do that comparison against the RIP or against the print engine. And if there's a problem, loop the file back around, run it through a changed PS check or output PDF setting and back through and see if it gets through fine that way. So we're able to do what we've done manually for years, which was, hey, let's try it with these settings and run it back through. Maybe it's okay. That's automated, less manpower, and the file gets out to press quicker.
Yeah, that's very smart. So the final question is, what makes our visual compare so special if you compare with the tools that we have in the market?
Goes back to what we've been talking about all along, just the flexibility and the scalability of Twist. Without boring us talking all that, it has great tools like being able to do colorimetric comparisons of the file. So you're comparing an RGB or ICC-based color against the CMYK results, and that being able to be compared, you're able to compare files of different sizes against each other, or limit to only inside the trim box in case you're adding decorations and slug lines. You're able to do all of that and control all of that, which a lot of solutions don't do.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's remind everyone that this is not a pixel by pixel comparison. So we have an algorithm behind the scenes that try to mimic the human vision. So if you make a color correction on the image, you don't want that to appear as an error, because that was a correction. But if you miss an element, if you miss a font or a character, this will be point out as an error. So that makes difference between our visual compare. That's why it's called visual compare, because it's trying to mimic the human vision. Between software that compare everything pixel by pixel, maybe you have 90% of errors because you're considering each pixel change to be an error. And that's not the case in the most of the times. All right, any final considerations before we close this topic?
I think we covered it well, except to say, many of you familiar with Twist, many of you just use it as a black box in the background and run stuff through it. But, a lot of people have kind of, I don't want to say forgotten about Twist, but it became a tool for ES. But it's always, especially if you have eTwist that came with your ES, take a look at the possibilities you can use Twist for. It's a powerful, powerful tool, very flexible tool. So.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the highlights, Fred, and answering our questions. And this was the final topic of our webinar today. So I think the DALIM studio can assume from here. And
well, we got a couple questions if you want.
Oh yeah, questions. Q&A. Well reminded. So let's jump on the questions. Well, we have a question here from Jen. I didn't catch it. It's visual compare a Twist built-in feature, or is it in only ES?
No, it's a Twist feature. It's actually a Twist tool. I think what Raphael was showing in ES was basically dialogues mode of being able to compare files, just as a reference of what Twist is kind of doing automated through a workflow. So
it's available in a standalone Twist, and it's also available in ES, in eTwist inside ES. So we have cases where we use both. We have standalone Twist servers checking for difference in files, and we have cases where we have publishers using ES, and they send the original files to the printers outside, the third-party printer, and they receive the normalized files done on normalize it on Printergy or any other software RIP that they have, and they then use the visual compare to check the normalized file against their original file to see if there are any issues on the normalized process. And we have another question here from Charles. Seems like this is very important when sending files to different digital presses with different RIPs to predict the outcome and get the same results across printers' devices.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh yeah.
It gets it there.
You want to avoid any kind of surprises on this matter. You have to make sure that all your printer suppliers will print the same page, and that's why the visual compare is so important.
Yeah, and that goes with his comment. Actually, goes back even to the pre-flighting and normalization. One of the powerful things about Twist has always been that ability to kind of keep older RIPs still able to function with newer files, to be able to normalize that file down to the level that the RIP can handle. So that's always been one of the advantages. We have that coming up soon. I think, Raphael, you reminded me, you mentioned that Type 1 fonts by 23 are going to be end of life by Adobe. So
yes,
we'll be able to use Twist to help RIPs down the line with that.